Hello, I'm John O'Farrell, and with me here is Tony Blair, who is joining me for a little bit of web history, because for the first time, a British Premier is going to take your questions on YouTube. Margaret Thatcher never did it, Harold Macmillan never did it, Winston Churchill never did it. I don't know what their excuse is, but you've been posting questions on the internet for the Prime Minister, and I've chosen some to put to him here today. Thank you for doing this, PM. First of all, let's start with some general questions covering your whole sort of decade in power. Don't you feel nostalgic for that period of your job when people were cross with you about the Millennium Dome?
You mean only that?
Exactly.
No, because what you do is, you know, if you're sensible about it and serious, that when you come into power, you have this great expectations and hopes and all the rest of it, and it is in the nature of politics that it doesn't...
Or disappoint.
Well, that it works out in a different way, and then what you've got to do is to be proud of what you've actually achieved. And, you know, I was in my constituency on Friday, and just taking it and really getting people to focus back on what it was like in 1997 and the change in living standards, in investment in basic services. You just look at the schools and the new equipment and so on.
Well, I'll come on to you. I'll come on to you about education in a minute.
But I mean, you know, but the point is that when you would ask people now, well, they don't focus on it in the same way. But if you actually took people back to 1997 and said, well, that was what it was like, you know, that's a different. And you've just got to get used to that and realise that in the intervening period, it's often a hard slog. Okay, but I will ask you about, I'll swap these questions around, ask you, and ask you a nice one straight off. Kevy, T89, that is the username of this particular blogger or whatever, has said, okay, Mr. Blair, what would you say the Labour Party's greatest achievement is under you? I suppose as a political party, given that parties are supposed to win elections, it's winning 3 elections for the first time in our history. But the far more substantial achievement is changing the country for the better.
Okay, because as a book writer, I wrote a book, as you may remember, called Things Are Going to Get Better. The first question I always got was, so, have things got better? And in what ways have they got better? I mean, it's a long, you know, I expect there's a long answer, but...
Well, let me give you a potted version.
Yeah.
There are 2.5 million more jobs. The economy is stronger. There are hundreds of thousands of kids and pensioners lifted out of poverty. There have been massively improved school results. Okay. NHS waiting is en route at the end of next year to getting rid of the old waiting system at all, where you just book your appointment. And we are the only government, I think, since the war, that if we left office now would have crime lower than when we came into office.
All crime, or is that...
Yeah, no, it's the whole thing.
Across the board?
British crime survey, yeah.
Okay. Okay,
I mean,
well, I wish I was...
I mean, people don't often believe that because they read terrible stories about what is happening. But actually, there have been, according to the British Crime Survey, crime is something like 30% or more lower. Okay, now see if you've got as many on your list for this questioner, who is Blue Fire Witch, who asks, Mr. Prime Minister, what do you think the biggest mistake is you've made as PM? Never answer that. You never answer it? No. You see, you had much more to say about your achievements than you did about your failures. Nothing you could put your finger on and say... No, I can say lots of things that I still think are wrong about Britain. But when people ask me, what's your greatest success, what's your greatest failure, I never answer it, because there's no point. That's for other people to judge. Okay, but do you have any mistakes, generally, that you think you made? I mean, no, but it's just... The best thing is to say, because there are obviously things that are huge challenges, both here and abroad. And you're best to go through those rather than talking about mistakes. All you do is just get a headline about mistakes, and if you say this is my greatest success, they say, well, you've done nothing else, and so you don't want to play your specifically your greatest. You don't want to play your specifically your greatest success or your greatest failure. Correct. Okay. Because you just get into it. It's like asking who's your favourite prime minister ever, and people then they read all sorts of things into it, so there's no point in doing it. Okay. Right, well now one of the subjects closest to your heart when you came into power, and you alluded to it just then. We've got a questioner here online from Wales, Mark Evans. We could play that clip in now, please.
Hello there, my name's Mark Evans, and this is my question for Tony Blair, Prime Minister. Mr. Blair, may I ask what happened to your policy regarding the eradication of child poverty? In Wales alone, child poverty has gone up 15%. When exactly are Labour planning on sorting out this problem? So that was my question. Please, please, Mr. Blair, could you answer it for me? Thanks.
Well, first of all, child poverty's not gone up in Wales or anywhere else in the UK.
Okay.
So we've actually taken, I think, 600,000 to 700,000 kids out of relative poverty, which is a far tougher test to pass. About 2 million out of absolute poverty.
That UNICEF report was pretty depressing reading, though, a few weeks back.
Yeah, but the UNICEF report, this is, I mean, it drove me nuts at the time. The UNICEF report was based on data that was data for most of the period when we weren't in government.
Right, okay.
So you've got this completely ridiculous thing where they were talking about 1990s data.
Okay.
Right. We were only in power, effectively, for a couple of years then. Actually, if you look at, and in fact, to be fair, the author of the report did say that the policies that this government is introducing are improving the situation. It's like on inequality, people say, you know, you've done nothing on inequality. Between 1979 and 97, the average percentage increase in incomes was higher for the top 10, 20, 30, 40% than it was for the lower.
Yeah,
That's been turned round in our period.
Then except the gap between rich and poor has got greater,
Yeah, but that's
hasn't
because...
it? I know the poor have got relatively poorer, but doesn't it... Sorry, richer.
Yeah.
The poor are not as poor as they were, relatively, but doesn't it say something, for me as a Labour Party member, it sort of sticks to my throat slightly that that gap is now bigger than it was under Margaret Thatcher.
But it's only bigger if what you do is you take the amount of money earned by the very, very top people. Yeah, I know, but the reason why they earn more money is because that's the way of the world. They do earn more money.
Well, it's the way of the world that the government lets it
Well,
be.
but if you decided as a government for these very, very wealthy people at the top that you were just going to take their money off them, I mean, all they do is move abroad.
Okay.
So the real issue is, have you actually managed to, if you take it down below that top level, if you take, say, the top 30%, the bottom 30%, which is a slightly better way of judging it, and you've actually got far more people in it, there's no doubt that the situation has improved. Those families, things like tax credits, extra child benefit, the fact that so many more people are in work, has meant a big improvement in living standards there. I mean, you know, as I say, the best way to look at it is to go back and compare the economic circumstances of the place you're in, 1997, with the economic circumstances today.
Okay.